So what I can do is to make a new sequence, so that's going to be, adding camera moves and things like that. To do that, we can go up here to cinematics, and we're going to add a level sequence. I like to make a folder called sequences, name our sequence, camera move 2. Okay, and we'll click save. And now what we can do, I like to do my sequences at 23.976. You could do 24. If you want it to be film like, I would recommend doing either 23.976 or 24. 24 is technically film, so I'll do 24 frames per second. What you need to do in order to add animations to objects in your scene, so you find your object, and this is how you create animations in general inside of Unreal Engine. You take your object and you simply drag it into your sequencer. And now this has our frames, and we can move through the different frames and add animations to our camera. So what I want to do is, we want to start our camera here. So what we can do is go down here to our transform settings, and I can click on this keyframe. And that creates a keyframe for our location, rotation, and scale. If we go and move our camera to some crazy spot like over here, if we then go into our sequencer and move the playhead, now you can see we're back to where we set this keyframe. So what I'd recommend when you're setting up your scene, if you want to have your camera in a set place, I would recommend creating a sequence like this and making a keyframe on the transform properties so that, if you move your camera accidentally, or if you want to just move your camera around in your scene to look around, you can always just come back here and it'll reset. So that's just kind of a little trick that I like to use, but you don't have to do that. It is useful for animation, and that's what I'm going to show you now. So if we go down to the end of our timeline here, we can move our camera. So I'm going to turn this down, and we can kind of go through the move as we want it to. So I want to have this camera rise a little bit and move over this rubble, and we're going to end it about here. Okay, so now I can go into my sequencer, and since I've moved to this frame, I can set a keyframe on the transform. And now what's going to happen is if we move the playhead back here and hit the spacebar, now our animation is going to play through, and we can see it playing through like that. Now we have a nice little animation, but it's a little bit fast. So what I want to do is go down here, and you can take this little bar and you can drag it to show more of your scene, and you can take this end time and increase it by clicking and dragging to the right. So that's going to increase your view, and now what you can do is take this and just move it out. This is the out point of your sequence, and this is the actual out point of your camera animation, and you want to drag that to the end as well. And then you can take your keyframes and drag them to the end of the sequence as well. And now if you play through it, your animation is going to be a lot slower. And that's kind of what we want here. So that's working quite well, and it actually is giving us a pretty nice looking animation. And now what I also want to do is go into our focus track settings, and I'm just going to pick this person. And now our person stays nice and in focus for the entire shot. And those are the basics of animating your camera. You can get into a lot more advanced stuff, but for now that's going to work for our scene. So by operating the camera yourself, you're actually giving yourself, you can change the rotation, the location, the positioning of your camera without having to go in and manually move the camera manually. You can just do it by navigating, which is really helpful. Now that we have an animation for our camera, we can kind of move on to the next step.